What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be a little different than what you're used to. I'm not doing a tool review on this one. I am doing a Tesla Model 3 review. As you can see, I am standing in front of a Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive. I recently purchased this 5 days ago. In terms of the EV world, I am the newest you will see. I went from a F-150 to this car, and as you can see, I live in an environment where the area is not conducive to driving an EV. So this video is going to be all about what I've learned in my 5 days of ownership with this thing, what I feel the range has been in this cold weather, and some quick things I've learned so far in the short period of time that I've owned it. So let's get into it. So the first thing I noticed of driving this in the winter is that it builds up a ton of ice on the front end. As you can see, obviously Tesla makes the vehicle very aerodynamic, so it sits very low to the ground. But that buildup of slush just freezes over instantly, and it limits what you can access in the frunk, which is right here. And the downside of that is that's where I like to keep my charging cable, but obviously when it freezes over, you gotta kind of fight with the ice to get that open. And it's actually the only compartment in the car that's not motorized, so it's kind of a pain in the ass. The second thing I will note is that the doors somewhat tend to do the same thing. Tesla has this cool door feature where, it's got that cool handle where you press in, it'll pop open and the window comes down. Really cool. So, sometimes it doesn't close if it's frozen like it just did because the handle is froze open. But if you close it, window goes up, which is really cool. But at the same time, if it's frozen, that won't happen. And Tesla makes a thing within the app where you could actually open the door without having to open the handle. But the downside of that is the app takes up to 5 days to recognize you owning the vehicle. And since I've only had it for 5 days, I don't have access to that yet. So just be aware if you're thinking about getting into one as one of the short-term problems. And one of the last things I'll note kind of on the outside in terms of doors is that the back trunk and the charging door, if there's a buildup of snow or ice, it will not open. The motor isn't powerful enough for the weight that's going to be on it. So just make sure it's kept clean. Make sure you do your best before opening them, or else it will not open on you. So I'd mentioned earlier that this model is the all-wheel drive version, and this car in particular came with all seasons, the Michelin LTX mud and snow tires, which are actually top-of-the-line all-season tires. Usually I'm pretty on top of getting winter tires for the winter, obviously, because where I live there's lots of snow, but these things seem to be glued to the road, which is nice. I mean, they are expensive all-season tire. You're looking around $2,000 for 4 of them, but it seems to work out pretty well. And the car does have settings in terms of modulating each wheel so you're not getting that spin out, so that is nice. Just with the regenerative braking, you have to be aware that if you take your foot right off the gas, you're going to be sliding like you locked up the brakes, so you have to get used to feathering it. Now let's get in the car and talk about the charging. All right, so we're in the car, and I want to talk quickly about the charging. So I have been charging this since 2 p.m. yesterday. So it's been charging for about 19 hours. And so far it's at 194 kilometers. And it estimates about 18 hours left until a full charge. Now, you might think that sounds terrible, but I am only charging off 120 volt, so it's just a standard plug that you'd have on the side of your house. Tesla obviously recommends charging at a higher rate, like 220, 240, or even their level 3 superchargers. I just don't have one yet, as I just got this car, so I'm doing what I can. You might think 194 kilometers, that's great. That will take you basically a few days of driving. But the other day I left, I had, I think, 250 kilometers till the charge was empty. I drove around 170, and I was almost dead empty. So obviously in the winter, it's going to cut down on that charging. So just be aware of that. So now to quickly talk about something you wouldn't think about in the winter, and that is your folding mirrors. So Tesla makes it so that automatically when you lock the car, the mirrors fold in, and then adversely when you unlock it, the mirrors fold out. Now in the winter, there's going to be buildup of ice, so if you don't shut that off, it's going to might damage the mirrors. So unfortunately, you can't do it inside the car, because there's only that fold mirror feature. But once you have access to that app, you could actually negate the folding from in the app. So that's pretty neat. And then I mentioned earlier that the car will modulate the wheels to try to negate slipping when driving in the winter. So in order to do that, you go into pedals and steering, and it'll go to slip start at the bottom. So it will say slip start, turn on and off, used to help free the vehicle stuck in snow, sand, or mud. And one of the last things I'll mention before ending this video is that when you're actually driving it, if you want to conserve energy, if you want to try to get the most range out of your battery, obviously try to prevent it from going under 20% unless you're looking to supercharge. Otherwise, always stay on top of what you're doing in terms of cooling the car, heating the car. If you're heating the car, the heated seat's going to take up a lot of energy. So if you're one of those people that like to sit around with a warm bum, just make sure you keep that in mind and take a look to see, make sure it's not on the passenger side as well. Otherwise, anything like the autopilot, the auto steer, that's all going to eat up that battery, and just frequently stay on top of that. So hope you enjoyed this video. I will be progressively making more and more videos about this car as I learn it a bit more. But ultimately, I just wanted to get on here and give kind of an honest review of my first 5 days owning this car. As always, if you have any questions, any tips for the next video, or anything you'd like to see out of this, let me know in the comments.